Good, wonderful Wednesday morning. It is Wednesday, the 11th of February, 2026. And today we have an action packed stack of speakers today. And I am pleased to sit there and kick it off this morning with somebody who is friends with a former past speaker who was absolutely exhilarating for everyone here. We have Mr. Jimmy Quintero Jr. joining us today. He has a wealth of experience in high stakes leadership, organizational development, and strategic growth. He is a veteran of the United States Marine Corps and recently served as the Assistant Chief of Operations, where he was responsible for driving operations excellence and exceeding rigorous performance quotas in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Beyond his impressive military service, Jimmy is a lifelong learner who has prioritized academic and professional growth. He holds a bachelor's degree and recently earned his master's in arts in organizational leadership from the American Military University, where he also served as a member of the National Society of Leadership and Success. This combination of hands-on leadership experience and academic expertise makes him a powerhouse in the world of business operations. Today, Jimmy serves as the Director of Strategic Partnership and Business Development at Millennium Health and Fitness. In this role, he bridges the gap between commercial and government sectors, building relationships that drive organizational culture and wellness on the national scale. He is here today to share his insights in transition from the uniform to the boardroom, the importance of networking, and giving you the advice that you are sitting there looking for in your day-to-day journeys to sitting there finding that wonderful OJT. As a reminder, questions are vital. So if you do have questions, do not be afraid to raise your hand and sit there and ask it immediately. Do not be afraid to interrupt me. This session is totally here for you, but please welcome me and please join me in welcoming Jimmy Quintero Jr. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Mr. Clay, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you, allowing me to talk to this distinguished group of individuals and degenerates at the same time. So, it's always great to be around, vets, military individuals, and it's definitely a pleasure. So, thank you very much for the welcome.
No, you're very welcome. It's great to have you on. It's always nice, like I said, to have a friend of a former speaker here today. I usually like to kick it off is pretend you are a Marvel superhero. What is your origin story? What led you to the United States Marine Corps out of all the branches and what you did in the Corps?
No, that we only got an hour. So, with that being said, my origin story, it's probably relatable to a few of you, and growing up in Southern Arizona, about 60 miles north of the border, just knowing what I wanted to be in life and how I was going to make it happen. I really had no idea, being, that close, there was a lot of things happening growing up, in the early 80s, 90s, and then graduating high school in 2000. There was multiple different paths you could choose. And when I decided that I was going through high school and from an early age, my parents, by the way, were first generation, they, instilled that, hey, you're not going to get involved with the wrong crowd. So I became an athlete. So from an early age, it was athletics that led me to really kind of establish my core values, and not only that, but having a mother who was extremely religious and, dragged me to Catholic church every Sunday. Definitely instilled that discipline and that system that allowed me to really focus on goals. But in high school, I didn't think about the military. I wasn't straight, from high school into the military. That wasn't me. That wasn't my path. And I was actually a pretty good athlete, and I was sought after. Earned some looks. Got offered a position to play, baseball, at Northern Arizona University, but when it came down to it, it wasn't, feasible financially for my parents to be able to send me and afford that. So I ended up walking on and attending, my first year of college at the University of Arizona. And so I graduated in 2000. So this is my first year. And, I always wanted to study, I was interested by, the science behind athletics. the human body as a machine. Like that was really something that I gravitated towards. And not only that, but we had an outstanding program at my high school that helped develop individuals to be champions. Like that was the mindset that we had, that it was all go, you were committed. It was your daily activities, in the morning, first thing, going to the gym. So that lifestyle was ingrained in me that, hey, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it to your full potential, because hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So that was a key for me. And so now, like I said, I'm in my freshman year of college, and I walk into class one day, and I'm like, "Good morning, Mr. Greg," because that was his name, Mr. Greg. And he says, "It's not a good morning when your country's in attack." So that was like, boom, what happened? What's going on? And then we're glued to the big box TV in the front, and it was September 11th of 2001. And it was important for me, to think about what was happening at that time and how people felt. And me being a freshman, and it was going fine. It was going to what my expectations were, being a high school athlete, being pretty good, show up to class and taking a nap in math was okay, But, a few months later, April of 2002, I said, I'm going to leave college. I made the decision on my own, didn't know anything about the military services at all. I didn't even go window shopping. I just knew that based upon someone's, said once upon a time, was the Marine Corps was the hardest branch. And that was what stood out to me. And so as I was, kind of just contemplating where I was at currently in life, what I was going to do, I made that decision to walk into that recruiting office and meet with those two individuals. And it was a fantastic experience. It was a conversation about who I was, where I was going, and what I was lacking in my life. And at that point, I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go with it. And so, I went through the process, and then I went to MEPS. And once I got back from MEPS, I went to go see my father. He was at a family restaurant that we had. And so I walked in, I said, "Hey, I need to talk to you outside." And he was like, "Oh no, she's pregnant." Right. And that's the first thing that came to mind, is like, I had that life-changing experience with my high school girlfriend. But it wasn't that. I told him that I decided to leave college and pursue the military. And at that moment, I thought I was going to wreck his world or whatever, but he just really said that he was proud of me, and that, I made a choice. I'm going to stick with it. And that's what ultimately led me to joining the Marines. Was that only thing I knew was it was the toughest, it was the hardest. And the conversation that I had with the recruiter was completely different than what I was expecting. And that right there changed the trajectory of how I felt and how I viewed things. And I hung up one uniform to put on another. And that's exactly what, it was for me over the course of the next 23 years.
You said something that's really interesting to me, because you were a freshman in college when 9/11 happened. I was a young Ranger in Ranger Regiment when 9/11 happened. So while you were sitting there seeing the news in the classroom, where I should have been, because that would have been my freshman year of college as well, there I was getting the warning order, getting ready to go kick things off in GWAT. So it's really fascinating to talk to people who are around that same time as I was, just on that different path. So fantastic. I do want to talk real quick about what you do, what Millennium Health and Fitness is, what you do, what's your day to day like, everything like that, just to sit there and paint the picture for those who are wondering what a strategic partnership and business development person does, sort of in that vertical.
Absolutely, because I had no idea what that meant too. And so before I get into that, it was, I know there's a lot of technical individuals here, and how it kind of led up to those events is where I kind of landed now. Because I call my former life, my first 11 years in the Marine Corps I was an aviator. I was a gunner on attack ships. So I was providing close air support, instracts, extracts, medevacs, all that good stuff. So high speed things that you think about. So Clay, when you talk about kicking indoors and everything else, I'm the guy looking over your shoulder up top, especially when troops in contact, when you get those things and that radio call. And so being an aviator, being a mechanic, I was looking towards, okay, how is that going to apply once I, got out of the military? And so, that was key. So I love being a mechanic. I love being an engineer. I love troubleshooting, doing, the vibrations and calibrations, testing safer flight, doing the QA stuff, doing, everything you can think about in maintenance control and workshop supervisor stuff. So that was huge for me, especially being able to have the effective flow of the system. But then I got into recruiting. That right there is what changed my life. And I went kicking and screaming. I wasn't the guy that volunteered for recruiting. I was like, no, not me. How do I get out of this? I'm highly sought after, in my job, and I'm proficient, and they need me based upon my quals. But it actually turned out to be the best thing that I possibly could have done for my career, because it taught me business. It had it was the ability for me to play and establish an entrepreneurship with my own team, with me being a recruiter, doing the sales, doing the presentations, understanding public speaking, and really having a battle rhythm set up. So we could talk more about that in a little bit, but how that transitions directly into, being a strategic partnership individual. Now, what exactly does that mean? Strategic partnerships is all about that long-term structured relationships between two or more groups, right? That's exactly what it means. But you have to create that mutual value by combining strengths and achieving the same goal. So, for example, what that means is Clay was a Ranger. Me, I was an aviator, but we had that direct relationship in order to achieve the common goal. That same thing applies to what happens on a daily basis for myself. Is I look at it from an organizational standpoint of how can we have a mutual connection relationship that benefits both parties to achieve a certain goal. So, when it comes through it, strategic partnership means that, hey, what does the partnership look like for the selection process in order to drive those outcomes, to drive those systems, to drive the overall success of those partnerships together, combining by choosing the right partner, by choosing the right entity, by choosing the right unit, and it's not just about the most convenient one, but having the right relationships for both organizations in order to drive long-term success.
Love it. I love it 100%. And you transitioned recently. So obviously, there's a culture shock, when you hang up the uniform and go into the civilian world. And you had a pretty big hop. I mean, it's not like you went into something that was mid-entry level. You went straight from the Corps to a director level role. What was the biggest culture shock that you experienced when you made that transition and you finally said, I'm tapping out of the Corps?
So culture shock is not even the word that you're going to have to be able to think about, right? Those emotions that you feel, that human will, that right there was, okay, you went from, having a certain level of status within your organization, for if you're in 4 years, if you're in 20 years, you have some type of luxury of status within your organization. You have a certain level of responsibilities. And so leaving that, because you become comfortable, you become, hey, I know my role. I know what the expectations are. I understand the system. I know how it applies on a daily basis. And that transition is scary. Those emotions of probably being excited and being nervous, and it's like public speaking and Mark Twain, right? He says there's two types of public speakers, that's the nervous and the liars. So, what that means is everybody's going to be nervous about their transition, and it's going to affect you. For me, in that culture shock, it was, I feel that the military and my last unit was a great transition period for me. And I wasn't planning to retire. Hence, I did 23 years. It was a key moment that I'd made that decision within like 30 seconds. And I went from one office to the other, and I submitted my Appendix J. So going in a direct role for a director, it was actually SkillBridge that gave me the opportunity. With Millennium, I was able to do SkillBridge with them And they gave me the opportunity to go from category to category, section to section, and shadow the strategic levels. And believe it or not, it was because of a prior relationship that I had made with an individual that was at one of our contracts. He was a contractor for us. And that relationship led to me being able to have some type of level status. You know, if you look at Amazon, you have those referral points, and, you know, you have those stars. And that set me up for me to be able to prove my value. And not only that, but allowed me to establish those relationships within the organization. Now, Millennium is based on, you know, comprehensive wellness operations across federal, commercial, as well as corporate environments. So what that means is we do primarily a lot of things within the government space. And a lot of our top executives are all soft guys, meaning that, you know, our VP is a former SEAL. You know, one of our other directors, you know, he's a Green Beret. And so these top level individuals are all still prior military. And that was a key into my transition, because I had individuals who have been there before to rely on to ask those questions. And they gave me the mentorship during my skill bridge. And then they said, you know what, hey, right time, right opportunity, you know, here we want you to come on board and fill this position that had been vacant for literally like 2 days. So it was the, you know, the opportunity that I got during skill bridge that gave me the ability to go directly into it. And then that transition was easy because I surrounded myself with individuals who were me, who did transition. And then not only that, but were able to kind of take me under my wing, and I fall underneath their umbrella.
I love it. I love it. Now, show of hands or drop, you know, one in the chat, you know, networking. Who heard what we talk about on a daily basis with everyone here that Jimmy just said? Either drop a one in the chat or raise your hand, because, yep, there we go. Right? He built the network. He was out there, he was connecting with people, and in a skill bridge program, he got himself to a director's. Guys, there you go. You have the opportunities out there, 1000%. Although, I mean, skill bridge to a director's role, that's really impressive. I love that. I love that a lot. I've never heard of that. I mean, and it was only because, you know, you networking, you connecting with people. I forget who I was talking with. It was someone a couple of days ago. I got it in my notes to follow up with him, but I was like, go find people who are contractors in what you do in the Air Force and connect with them. Find people who you know and build that network and start growing it from there, because you never know what will sit there and come about from it. So there you go. Jimmy is a great example of sitting there doing that 1000%. So I want to talk about your master's in organizational leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Right as you were transitioning, how did that degree sort of like change your thought process in life, and how did it help you get to where you're at right now?
Oh, you know, it's so much more than that, Clay, you know, because when I first joined, and we kind of take it all the way back. When I first joined, I told myself and I told my father, you know, because again, my parents were first generation. And for me, going to school, I was the first one in my family of 4 individuals, and I'm the youngest. You know, me and my brother shared a room. He was 17. I was like 22. I was like, man, when are you going to get on with your life and do your thing? So as I left college, I made a promise to my father that I was going to continue my education. Like, hey, I'm not going to stop this. I'm going to continue this, and I'm going to get it. But it really wasn't just the degrees that set me up for that. It was taking advantage of the opportunities before I transitioned. And it wasn't until I became a recruiter that I really learned that there was so many more opportunities. And not only that, for you transitioning members, there's still more programs out there in order for you to gain certificates, get your additional education. And not only that, for you to be able to utilize those certificate programs that are endless for you. Because, you know, I still take advantage of them all the time. And then knowing that, but finding opportunities within, you know, Millennium do provide certificates and follow-on training based upon your current role. So those things are important. The key, though, on why education in those certificate programs are important is because the terminology. how you are able to take that terminology from the military of what we look at, like, knowledge, skill, system, attitude, SWAT, BAMSIS, pesos, all these analogies, they fit directly into what we look at, on the business side. For example, you have pink, red cell, and then you have white glove. Well, what does that mean to us in the business world and the strategic partnerships? Hey, well, you're going to have proposals. You're going to have legal documents that you got to be able to get to a 65% solution. Look at that in the organizational leadership, in rotational leadership for your current role in the military. Hey, you got to get LOIs, you got to get legal documents, you got to get training plans, you got to get some type of calendar control, and not that, but you got to provide documents for the COs or the OICs to be able to approve. And you hate it, like how many times you write a document and you submit it to them and they red ink it, all of it, because of the preparation of the font or the spacing or something along those lines. Well, having that ability to translate those types of skills, which you think is irrelevant because you're in a technical environment, but now you're looking at it from a strategic point is, hey, we got the same type of things. Now I'm submitting proposals to the lawyers for them to red ink the hell out of it in order for me to go back to those proposals to work with those other organizations. So having the degree, which I retired in officially as of June of last year, and I transitioned to finish my degree very recently. So having that insight to be able to translate what we do in the military and having the applicable skills in order to have that type of language understanding was key, because now you're able to have those conversations with the civilians who've never been in the military, but you're able to use their language to help you understand. And not only that, but asking a ton of questions. And the organizational management part for my degree is, hey, how can you take those rotational leaderships? Again, think about it. You have so much experience from transferring from unit to unit or from commander to commander of having the ability to communicate effectively and understanding systems that apply to your organization. That right there is key for achieving goals, because again, goals can be hit. It's the systems that create longevity, especially between commands, billets, as well as leadership. So having those applicable skills is important, because again, one of my key things, and I still keep this on my desk, believe it or not, is this little book for my Marines who know it. It's Warfighting Marine Corps Doctrine Publication 1. And that right there proves that, and I'll paraphrase one of my favorite excerpts from that, and that is, leaders who do not self-develop are leaders in appearance only. Now, what does that mean to you as you transition? Is not to get complacent. How do you continue to self-develop yourself so that way it makes you marketable, it makes you the subject matter expert, and not only that, but it prevents the complacency, and you continue to improve yourself over a course of time. So the Masters was just like one of those check in the box, because why? Hard skills gets you the interview. Soft skills gets you the job. The degrees, the certifications, everything that you put on that resume gets you that interview. How you articulate those messages is what gets you the position to become a director at an organization like Millennium Health and Fitness.
I love it. I love it. And you had the Marine Corps Warfighting Manual. Yes, as you guys can see, here's the Ranger Handbook, and here's the Small Unit Tactics Handbook. Boom, 1000%. I keep those on my book as well. On my, sorry, got distracted. Anyways, where was I? Sorry, squirrel from the chat.
No,
so let's chat about, this one's a hard one. A lot of veterans fear that they have to start over at the bottom. You stepped into a director's role. You were doing the transition. You did all the networking. For those out there who feel like they are transitioning out and they feel like they have to start over, what's your advice to them?
Oh man. Okay. And so, so I submitted, believe it or not, I submitted a ton of applications, submitted a ton of resumes. And it was one of my mentors that gave me the guidance based upon his failure, right? And his understanding. And as I was transitioning, because again, networking, as Clay referred to, is huge. When people say, hey, reach out to me once you retire or once you get out or once you transition, don't be afraid to take them up on that. Don't be afraid to say, hey, commander or so-and-so or whoever it may be, reach out to those individuals and take them up on their offers. That's key number one. Number two was I submitted and I took interviews just to take them, just to get the preparation, just to say, okay, what is it that these civilians are going to ask me in these organizations for me to be able to prepare myself for a job that I really want? And so those practice things, are going to be key to your success, because again, it prepares you as you train for that. Just like those repetitions of kicking in doors, doing the mechanic stuff, doing the OJT, transition yourself and prepare for that by taking interviews and submitting your application across it. Now, I looked at multiple different skill bridge opportunities as well. I didn't just bank on one. And and looking at which one was going to be key for me. But what my mentor had told me and instructed me is find something that you care about and you're passionate about that you could see yourself doing. Because he took a job that paid him a lot of money, but it wasn't giving him the fulfillment and the joy that he's really looking for. And so for me, as I talked about early on and who I was and my development, is I love fitness, I love coaching, I love being part of teams and such upon that. So as I was transitioning, I found an organization, Health and Fitness, that provides a service, right? Provides, opportunity for people to get better, provides a great team that is going to be able for me to connect to those individuals that are in the military myself. And so find an organization or find some type of niche that you're passionate about, whether it be guns, whether it be, working on cars. There's so many different opportunities that you have in those niches that you could provide some type of service. So I get it. I was looking at, I submitted an application to Raytheon. I submitted an application to AI companies. I submitted an application to JP Morgan. I submitted all these applications, but I took Millennium because, again, it suited me and something I was passionate about. And that was health and fitness, wellness, and all that, but relationship building and leading teams and being part of a team too, to contribute, right? So with that being said, it was about how can I provide a service to an organization that I'm passionate about, that I know the systems, I know I'm able to articulate the message and work well with other individuals of like mind. So that right there is key for you guys transitioning, and that's going to make it super, 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 joyful for you, because you like going to work, right? You like doing what you do. You like the product that you talk about. And the wellness culture that we provide at Millennium talks about all those things. So I appreciate you. That was a great question. Thank you, Clay.
Oh, you're very welcome. Rico's probably told you I'm the man of a lot of really good questions for you. Nicholas, why did I have a feeling that you were going to raise your hand and ask a question? Jimmy, Nick is a 20-year veteran of the Marine Corps, and he is a master of a lot of different things. So, Nick, fire away, sir.
Well, I'm not in the Marine Corps. I'm in the Air Force, but
sorry.
no, I'm
My
not
bad.
tough enough for the Marine Corps. No, I'm the Chair Force. No, I was gonna ask. So I think you brought up a very solid thing that I didn't really think about. That because everybody's like, oh, do what you like to do, do what you like to do, do what you like to do. But it's like, okay, I do what I like to do, but I don't want to go work at a company doing things that I don't want to do at that company. So it's a very valid point to do what you enjoy doing, but you can go to any sort of market doing that thing to help support their cause. I just want to say you made me think that's a pretty good point that you made there. My question is, what happens if, or what's your suggestion if you hop into a position, you think you want to be there, and you realize, yeah, this isn't right for me? Just jump out, kind of give it some time to marinate in, because, embrace the suck, right? But maybe not in the civilian sector.
And that, the great thing about what you just said is that it's not what you thought it was going to be. And, for you is having that transition, being a civilian organization, you're not obligated unless you have some type of contract that goes there. And one thing that I've always learned too is what is the bright spots? Okay, what is it about an organization that you did like that you could take with you? It was an experience that you thought it was something that you wanted, but it wasn't that. So that makes you look at, okay, my next organization that I'm transitioning to, and again, your situation may be different than mine, where you're retiring, you have that retirement pension, you're able to be financially secure. So for you, you might be able to just say, you know what, I'm going to leave this one. I'm going to go try submission for other. Or for others, they got to find that next opportunity before they leave. And it's based upon your situation that you currently have. And when you look at it as far as what you could bring to the table, again, I'm not saying do something that you love, but find something that interests you, that motivates you, or piques your interest. So, like, I don't deal with the WELL culture specifically, but I provide those connections and those relationships. So looking at it from a bigger standpoint is, okay, we build gyms. Okay. And so one of the part that we do is design and build. So an organization like IBM, like, Wells Fargo, they want to provide a service to their people. I'm all about that. I'll connect with somebody and we'll talk about, wellness and how we can bring that to their institution and say, okay, you want a gym, we're going to design and build it to your specifications. Now it's my role, in order to get our partners like Life Fitness, Echelon, Evil Biometrics, and have those conversations in order to connect so we can service the client. So, when you think about that, is how can you bring something to an organization and say, okay, well, where's the connection piece at? Because you may know aircraft. Okay, well, let me talk about something about the aircraft. Establish the commonality. And that's key, because you understand it, you know what it means, you have a relationship, and you're able to talk the language and bring that service to an organization. So don't just limit your vision to, I'm a maintainer, I got to be in maintenance. You have so much more ability on your resume in order to talk maintenance or aircraft to a provider, to a supplier, to somebody that's going to get that point, that part, or that maintenance or that service, because again, you have the understanding of what involves in that field. So looking at it from that standpoint, Vice, hey, I have to be a maintainer. Does that make sense, Nick?
Yeah, that's solid. I didn't even think of it like that, to be honest, because I was stuck in my silo, right? I'm a cyber IT guy. So I'm going to go tech, IT, cyber industry. And the more I'm evolving and learning, it's like I could literally just go to it'd probably be better if I went to a different industry and try to bring that capability to that industry, right? So I just didn't really think outside my silo mostly.
Yep. And guess what, baby? That's back to war fighting, right? The fog of war. You get so much tunnel vision that you just focus on what's directly in front of you instead of expanding your scope. Expand your scope. What can I do? Who can I do? And how can I transition and make it applicable to an area where, IT, but I'm looking at an industry that can utilize my skill set and understand that, hey, I'm a veteran, those preference points, Small Business Associates of America, having all those understanding of a government contract. But not only that, you have a secret clearance that allows you to connect and say, hey, I could bring this to your organization and all these other attributes based upon my hard skills.
I love it. I love it. Mr. Christopher Keith, the other Air Force guy who likes to ask questions. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for all your brilliant insights into this. So yeah, there's the experience, there's the know-how, there's knowing what you love, but there's also that saying, trusting your gut and your gut instincts. Do you believe that is also the best way to expand your horizons, or more than half the time it's going to lead you down paths by trusting your gut that you didn't want to go down to?
That's a very interesting, Chris. So I'm going to ask you a follow-on question to that. So what makes it, where you're thinking about your gut or your intuition? Tell me more about that. What's that about?
It's about feeling like you can accomplish something by going into a strange direction you never been into before. Or you have people around you telling you that doesn't seem like a good idea. Do you really want to go down that route? And when you look deep down within yourself and you're thinking hard about it, your gut instinct tells you to either go back, listen to them, or just go for it. More often than times, your gut instinct will tell you, just go for it.
Okay. So when you think about it and look at it, so your body is a mechanism, and it has two established nervous systems. You have your system one and your system two. System one is, hey, that is my ability to think through things and being able to apply it. And then your system two is what? Your nervous system that reacts, that fight or flight. So that right there is your own body telling you, okay, my intuition, my nervous system, my system, in order for me to process and make a decision. Now, when you look at that from two different realms, this is kind of what I heard from you, Chris, is that you have people telling you that you should think logically, and then you're telling yourself that you should follow your emotions. So you have your conscious talking to you, and and as we know, sometimes the failure to make a decision is an inability for you to be able to apply and achieve your goal, because now you're weighing things, pros and cons, and looking at it. I got to make this list, and this is all the benefits for me, and then all this list, and these are all the cons for me. Now, man, following your gut, you're going to have that, and you've developed that over the course of your time in the Air Force, Chris. And with you having the ability to effective decision make and critical skills make, sometimes you got to follow your gut, and sometimes you got to be able to have those pros and cons. Now, for me, I followed a little bit of my heart as well, because I connected with the individuals that I worked with while I was working with, and I was inspired to be. And that gave me like that sense of, hey, I'm good. I'm all right. Now, I could have taken another job that paid me a whole lot more money. I get paid well. I promise you, I get paid well. I'm financially secure, 401k, all the benefits, everything that you could look for. And when I looked at it again, is, hey, where am I going to be able to find myself that fits every majority of the needs? Not every need, because then if I look at it that way, now I'm going to be like I'm going to be searching for a very long time. For us, and your transition, there was a great book that I read. It's called 10X is Better Than 2X. Okay. And what that means is know your value, know your worth, and not only that, but know, like, hey, what am I striving for? Because majority of people say, hey, I want to get out of the military and I want to make, the same amount of money that I get. But you got to put a quantifiable objective on top of that, meaning striving for that 10X. Hey, I'm going to shoot for the stars. So for a salary, for example, plus 20%. If you get, but most people only look for, hey, I want the same salary. And so now, or 2%, but I strive for that 10%, that 20%. I landed at 15. Hey, I achieved my goal. So the same thing that happens with you, Chris, is looking at, hey, what is it going to benefit you? And not only that, but allowing yourself to listen to that system within your internal body to say, you know what, I can survive. And I'm not only that, but I can thrive, because survive mode means what? That we're living day to day, that, you're trying to get by, you're living the dream in the military, or for example, is, hey, I'm on in thrive mode. Now I'm going through and I'm really focusing on how I can perform at a higher level constantly and effectively. And so if you listen to too many people telling you that you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, you really do have to follow your gut sometimes and say, hey, this is the best situation for me, or this is the worst situation for me. And just like Nick pointed out, it's time for me to make a change.
I love that. 1000%.
Thank you so much for that. So that book, it's called 10 Eggs is Better Than 2 Eggs.
No, 10X.
10X. Right. Got it.
10X, right, is better than 2X.
Is that by Dan Sullivan? Is that the?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay,
great book.
great.
I'm a lifelong learner. I love to read. So if you're not reading, if you're not self-developing, again, you are a leader in appearance only.
Yeah, my library is going to be growing these next few months. It looked like one of those guys' offices where they have all the books behind them.
Oh, yes. You have to. You have to.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there are plenty of times I have sat there and I have grabbed books off of my bookshelf, and it still grows every single day. I do want to sit there and ask you kind of, when a lot of veterans step out, they're used to the incredibly clear chain of commands. They're used to having that structure. And some veterans, and I was one of them, when they step into into the civilian world sort of struggle a little bit because there is that want to have that structure, even though later in my career I was used to dealing with ambiguity. A lot of people sit there and look at veterans and say it's got to be highly structured. I have to make sure that they're in the loop. How do you break that mentality of your civilian employers? What's your thought process on telling civilian employers you don't have to really structure it per se? Just give them the avenue of the approach so that way they can sit there and execute the mission in question.
Oh man, that is a fantastic question about how the lack of structure within an organization. Because, for example, Millennium Health and Fitness, we have different departments, right? And so you really don't have a chain of command. That really doesn't, for me specifically. And, so, but you have project managers, you have people who are beneath you, you have people that you got to get information or work directly with. And so understanding that, hey, you're not going to have that specific chain of command, it's kind of, it's funny because I call everybody, it carried over from the military. I call everybody boss, right? I say, hey, boss, and that's that certain level of respect. And that's that relationship building that you have within your organization, is because it's not really like you have a structured, who's, executive level and, from, the tactical level, organizational level, and the strategic level. So, but you understand those things. So, I like to call everybody, and I still the customer courtesies, the mans, the sirs, the boss. And the reason why I say boss is because it's like chef. You guys ever seen the shows? They call everybody in the kitchen chef, right? Because it's a certain level of respect, and understanding that they have that type of experience that you may need. And relationships are important within organizations, because if you do not have common understanding, common trust, then you're not going to get what you need. And what I mean by that is rapport. If they don't like you, they don't trust you, they don't believe you, they don't think that you're a good person, they're not going to give you what you need, whether that's capital, whether that's knowledge, whether that's, some type of insight or help. For example, if I say, to Clay, hey, can I borrow $5? But he doesn't like me. He doesn't want to know me. Like I'm not a good dude. I don't trust it. I don't do what I say. And, and I don't have that capacity. He's not going to give me the $5. But if I have a relationship, I'm a good person, I follow up what I do, I'm on time, I'm respectful, I establish a relationship, then I'm going to usually get what I need. So for you, transitioning is understand that people and how they feel, and having that empathy and those emotional skill sets, that you can have a connection with individual, and that you're an active listener. And not only that, but you really do care about them. Meaning that, like, hey, when you're talking, and I'm unable to be I'm going to be actively listening and go and be able to do so. But then on the same side, that caveat, right? That they don't have that same type of, how do you say, go to or get going, or, the ability that, hey, they're going to have their system in play where they know that they need to accomplish certain things from here. And then, and that triage of priorities. So it's a little bit more challenging when you need something, or you need something, to be able to have that contribution. But having the ability to, in order to be able to articulate your message and connect with those individuals and have a strong foundation of communication, you'll be good, you'll be fine, and you'll be able to establish relationships in order for people to get what you need to get. So the moral of the story is how can you be an effective communicator is key to your ultimate success with individuals who are not prior military.
I like that. And thank you for that. And I got a follow-up question to that, because this is something I get from a lot of people here, is you're building those relationships, you're having all of that as well. In your personal opinion, what is the secret sauce to building those partnerships that actually last? And, walk us through sort of that thought process with your internal clients and your internal teams versus your externals.
Oh, the relationships that last, that right there is understanding the needs and motivators between each of them, and being able to bridge gaps. That's the key. And it's the art of negotiation, really, when it first comes to it, because as you have those the essential communication skills, and that's to be able to how you say, listen with purpose and establish rapport. Again, establish rapport means that, hey, they know who you are, they know what you're about, you establish trust, and not only that, but how you're going to be able to apply those throughout the entire relationship. And it's not to avoid conflict either, because you're going to have conflicts no matter what, internally or externally, but it's all about maintaining the relationship. And the key is kind of like the same thing with being a nice guy and being a good guy. Being a nice guy means that, hey, you put everybody first, you allow them to go first, you're thinking about everybody else except yourself. Again, it's not a bad thing. Being nice is not a bad thing, but having the ability to be a good person, knowing that, hey, who I stand for, what I do, being able to be truthful to your word. And not only that, but, taking care and serving other individuals and being able to respond effectively too. Because again, it's that type of relationship where it's a give and take. So by longevity with relationships is, how can I give you and take? Because that is the interpersonal relationship between it. So externally, it's the same exact thing as internally, is how can I establish relationship and effectively bridge gaps? Meaning compromise. I need this, you need this. Let's negotiate multiple times. Let's ask questions. What's important to them and why? What's important to me and why? And how can we get to the yes? So because more times you establish barriers based upon your own views and things, meaning that, hey, I'm not open or receptive to information because what matters to me is the most important. So internally and externally, relationships last in longevity is because it's a give and take relationship. You got to be able to provide and you got to be able to take as well. And not only that, but you got to be able to bridge those gaps in between. So that way, ultimately, everybody's successful. So the whole point of strategic partnerships is exactly that. How can we negotiate to understand that it's best for both parties and be able to grow? What's important to you? What's important to me? Why it's important? Why it's important? What service do I provide? What I need from you? And who's ultimately important is serving the client who's purchasing it. So it's the same thing within an organization. What's important to me? What's important to you? And how are we going to be able to make that mutual understanding and get to the middle ground sometimes? Because again, no is a good thing too. No, I'm a good dude. That's not going to happen. But let's talk about how we can get to the solution. You guys have done this multiple times, guys and ladies. You guys have done this multiple times throughout your career. Is how can I be an effective leader and communicate that process well to establish relationships? And it took me a long time to realize this as well. But it was later in my career, in the Marines, was lead by example, be the fastest, be the quickest, be the strongest. Like, hey, you're gonna look like me and be like me. But later on, it was, hey, you still got to set the example. But do you know your individuals on a personal level? What motivates them? Why it's important to them? And not only that, but do I care and have empathy? Okay, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy, but you got to understand where they're coming from. And you got to be able to say, you know what, I get where you're coming from, but that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So there's that ability later on in my career that I learned is that, hey, I got to be the example. I got to be physically fit and have a wellness, environment in my own life. But not only that, I got to be able to, present that in a fashion and have the ability for me to show that the connection between individuals internally and externally. So, connecting it that way, Mr. Clay, is a great way because again, is understanding effective communication and self-development.
I love it. Love it 1000%. We only got a little bit of time left before I got to give these guys a break before our next speaker. But I asked Rico this when he was on a couple of weeks ago, and now I'm going to ask you this. If you could go back to 6 months before your retirement, what would be the one thing that you would have done differently and why?
Oh man, 6 months prior to my departing. You know, it was from the day I started, I started, you know, my from day one was what was my exit strategy? Not goal, my exit strategy. What was I going to do in order to set myself up? And so 6 months prior to transitioning is okay. I made that decision. So 18 months, I submitted my paperwork. 18 months from that day, I was going to retire. And it was actually at that point was like, okay, I'm really doing this. What is my strategy? What is the system? I know my goal, but am I going to be able to accomplish that? And so I wouldn't really change much because I had some fantastic individuals in my career who set me up for success. And, you know, the mentor that I still currently talk to, you know, is a big individual within the Marine Corps, huge. But it was for the key to my next success was, hey, I'm exiting. I know I'm going to keep doing, you know, what I do. I'm going to keep being on top of everything. I'm not going to get complacent, but I did write it down. Everything that I want to strategize to accomplish, I made a checklist because that put it in the priority of what I was going to do in that time from that last 18 months. And so that right there was the key for me is, hey, I know that I want to leave. I know that I want to go into an executive levels position. I know I love working with organizations, but changes anything, I really wouldn't change a whole lot because I had great people that I relied on to pick their brains, lots of knowledge that I gained from them. But if I would do it all over again, I think that would be the key is continue to maintain those relationships and ask, hey, what do I need to do? How do I need to get there? And literally write it down because if it becomes on paper, it's gonna come into intuition. You know, you're gonna have that and you're gonna put it into motion. But yeah, continue to do that. And I think that's the key. You guys doing 7 Eagle and thinking about your future, y'all already ahead of me. You know, that's fantastic. And continue doing that and taking those knowledge. And you know, you have really 15 seconds to influence somebody's life. Really. And those relationships matter. So what you could take from there and how you could, you know, still that little plagiarism things, you're going to be just fine because you guys really care about your goals and not only that, but your transition, because you wouldn't be doing this program if you weren't motivated and you didn't have a certain level of care for yourselves. So congratulations to every single one of you. I know that we're running out short on time, so please find me on LinkedIn. I'm an executive coach. I talk to people all the time. I give mentorship. You know, that was a big key. So find me on LinkedIn. Follow Millennium because we put a lot of great things out there as well on LinkedIn and driving that. So find me, send me a LinkedIn message. Tell me what you think and I'll connect with you. I promise you, I will answer every single DM that you send me and give you some type of guidance on a personal level because somebody along the line gave it to me. And if I could do that for you, I serve my purpose.
Fantastic. Yep. And I dropped your LinkedIn profile directly into the chat several times, so expect several dozen connection requests to you. But Jimmy, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you on the bottom of my heart and from all of us here at 7 Eagle. Thank you very much for your time. Jimmy Quintero, if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, I apologize, but Director of Strategic Partnerships and Business Development at Millennium Health and Fitness. Thank you very much for your time today, brother. I appreciate it. I'll be following up with you shortly.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much again, everybody. And Millennium does have Skill Bridge, so follow them, and they post those periodically. Okay, so we'll be good.